Game of Thrones Season 8 at this point could literally consist of dragons farting on screen for about 67 minutes, all 6 episodes, and I would honestly be content. That being said, everyone I think is most looking forward to the dragon scenes next season. We do know the bad guys finally got a dragon, and with Daenerys and the Night King set to square off alongside Jon Snow, we know we are in for a hell of a ride. But one of the things many of us forget to discuss is the political aspect. Like, yes, the Iron Throne in the end will mean nothing, but this is still a political intrigue show. There has to be some sort of backstabbing and conniving, otherwise this wouldn't be Game of Thrones. This would literally just be Dance with Dragons. In this video, I'm gonna bring to you guys a leaked scene that was sent to me through the DMs over on Twitter. Speaking of which, make sure you go follow me, but I'm also gonna mention some of my thoughts and opinions / theories on some of the major characters. These leaks are to be taken with a grain of salt, as they're more than likely a load of horse shit, but nonetheless, here's your spoiler warning. Before we get started, please slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 420. Also, make sure you're subscribed. We are trying to reach 50,000 subscribers on this channel before Game of Thrones Season 8 starts, so please help me reach that goal by subscribing and also making sure you have your notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. Okay, so these leaks, or this leak from 2 different scenes, involves Jon Snow, Daenerys, Tyrion, and Sansa. Before we jump into that, I just want to clarify a few statements that I've made on some of these characters that are related to these leaks, and that's always in air quotations there. Now, I've mentioned before how I thought that Daenerys might be coming off as the Mad Queen to the regular folk, or the citizens of Westeros who are not in her inner circle and who didn't travel with her across the Narrow Sea. So these people don't really know who she is. All they've heard and all they've seen is that this foreign queen shows up claiming that she's a lost Targaryen, the Iron Throne is hers, and if anyone disagrees with her, she's going to burn them to the ground. And this is exactly what she did. She destroyed House Tarly. Now, Samwell is still alive, but he's a maester. Tyrion warns her right before she does this. He tells her you can't go uniting the 7 kingdoms if you start beheading every single person who disagrees with you. Now, that's obviously not verbatim there, but he has a point. If Daenerys wants to conquer or unite the 7 kingdoms and wants there to be a civilized society and her reign to be prosperous, she cannot do this by going out and executing every single person that refuses to bend the knee. Now, she does have a point in saying she didn't come there to enslave people. She came there to unite them. So if they choose that they are against her, well then rightfully, yes, she'll burn them. Now, when I made the statement saying that the average people of Westeros probably look at her as the Mad Queen, and she kind of is for what she did, most people probably just heard, oh, you hate Dany, fuck you. But that's not actually the case. It did, however, force me to do some further research into why do I feel this way. Why do I feel like Daenerys is being the Mad Queen in Season 7, and if she's not stopped, then in Season 8, she may kill and destroy a lot more people who are somewhat innocent. Now, when I went on that journey, that brought me all the way back to Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 1. Now, I want to clarify something here. A lot of people say Daenerys wasn't raped by Khal Drogo, and it was sort of romantic. No, that's the bullshit. Daenerys was full-on raped by this massive, bulky dude, and because Jason Momoa was such a likable character, everybody was like, oh no, he's not that bad of a rapist. He just is, misunderstood, and he truly loves her. No, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. He may have eventually grown to have some sort of affection for her, but she was raped by this dude, and her thinking that, she was in love with him, this was most likely Stockholm Syndrome. Then she turns all of that pain into triumph. Like, yes, she may have lost Khal Drogo, but she gained 3 children who are going to further her goal in returning to Westeros and uniting the 7 kingdoms, which is her birthright. It's not something that she chose to do. This is in her mind, anyway. This is something that she has to do. This is her destiny. Because it's been many, many of years, we sort of forget that. Daenerys did not choose to set on that path, which ultimately led her to conquering the 7 kingdoms. It was forced upon her. Her older brother Viserys grew up his entire life thinking that he has this throne that's just, waiting for him. All he has to do is get an army and go take it. So that obviously gets passed on to his sister. Now remember, right when Khal Drogo shows up to initially look at Daenerys, she changes her mind. She's like, look, I don't want this. I don't want to go with this strange person. And her brother forces her to do this. So that's what I mean when I say that she didn't choose this path herself. Her brother sort of thrust her into this position. And in this type of society, almost every single character is high-strung up on this prophecy that they all have in their own heads, how they're destined to rule a certain kingdom or all of the kingdoms, every single character has this complex, if you want to call it. They all think that they have this great destiny, and if they don't complete their destiny, then everything will have been for nothing. So each character acts their own way to necessitate their ultimate endgame. Daenerys is no different in this. So my confusion in calling her the Mad Queen and saying that she's being ridiculous just was in and of itself confusion that I forgot what her destiny was, and I forgot really how every character works. One thing that pissed me off is that people said, oh, you're only saying this to Daenerys because she's a woman and you don't like seeing a woman in power. No, that's not it. The one reason, my biggest gripe with Daenerys and you know, certain actions that she took in season 7 is because that's not her. She's acting irrational because she has this idea in her head that she's set to rule the 7 kingdoms and she has to do everything in her power to do so. But one thing we all have to keep in mind, and this sort of pertains to this leak that I'm about to start talking about, is the fact that anyone who's not in Daenerys' inner circle, Jon included, he wasn't really into the fray up until like episode 4, once Tyrion suggested to him that he goes around and meets the people that decided to be on that island and go and take the 7 kingdoms with Daenerys. Really, anyone who's outside of Daenerys' circle sort of sees her as a tyrant and as a mad queen. And anyone who is in a position to be burned by Daenerys, well, they might not be as friendly to her because of the potential threat that she represents to their position of power. Now, this leak that was sent to me starts off by explaining how the major threat next season is the White Walkers. But there's also a subplot that goes along with that, starting in the very first episode. And this is the political intrigue that we're going to get for the final season of Game of Thrones. Now, they say that the plot line itself sort of has been building up all of this entirety, but we'll see, because like I said at the beginning of this video, these leaks are most likely a load of horseshit. So the leak starts out with Tyrion and Sansa start to plot to break up Jon and Daenerys. They decide that a union between these two would never be accepted in Westeros, even if they saved the 7 kingdoms from the army of the dead and the Night King. The first scene we see this in motion is between Tyrion and Daenerys in episode 1 of season 8 at Winterfell. Tyrion tells Dany how he never thought he could love again, and that once he met her, that all changed. He grabs her hands to pull her closer to him as he pleads with her, but she pulls away and in tears says, "I have chosen Jon." And then, later in that same episode, we get another scene with Sansa and Jon. Jon jokingly asks Sansa if she knew he'd return with the Mother of Dragons, and how she is now their greatest ally. Sansa interrupts Jon by screaming, "How could you? Her father killed our grandfather and uncle. It's only a matter of time before she does the same to us." Sansa does get through to Jon, but he ultimately promises Sansa that he'll always put House Stark and the North first. And with that in mind, this is why he chose to ally himself with the Queen of Dragons. Sansa then apparently ends the conversation by exclaiming to Jon that if anything happens to House Stark, then Jon Snow would be the one to blame for bringing enemies to the gates of Winterfell. Now, just sort of pause for my thoughts real quick. I see the first conversation between Daenerys and Tyrion sort of going down that way. Tyrion is 100% in love with Daenerys. Every single action that he takes next season is most likely going to be clouded by the fact that he's in love with this woman. You can't really work for the benefit of the 7 kingdoms if every action or every step you take is going to be to try to get you closer with the woman you're in love with. There's obviously a conflict of interest there. Now, the fact that Tyrion just comes out and says this to Daenerys, I don't really know if he's going to do it that way. I feel like after he saw Jon and Daenerys hooking up on that boat, he may realize that if he doesn't act quickly, then yes, Daenerys and Jon Snow will fully get married and he will never have a chance to be with the woman he loves. The line of him saying that he thought he could never love again, well, that 100% fits in line with Tyrion Lannister. Now onto the scene between Jon and Sansa. Now, I don't really know what to sort of expect from Sansa next season. I've been given a lot of shit on my channel for my opinions on Sansa, and people get confused by that as well. So let me explain further. Sophie Turner is an amazing actress. The problem is, when you have someone like her who in the first season, the first several episodes, she's basically a whingy little whining brat. And then she eventually has a shit ton of fucked up stuff happen to her, and we're all like, oh, holy crap, I feel really bad for you. But when you have a character like Sansa in a show where you have knights, dragons, tits everywhere, it's kind of like Sansa sort of just takes a back burner to that. So any scene that she's involved in, you're kind of rushing it to get off screen. Or I am, at least, and I never really paid attention to it. And then when you add on top of that the fact that every single other member of House Stark has something insanely interesting going on for them. Jon is becoming the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, being brought up from nothing and made into something of importance. Then you have Bran, who's traveling north of the Wall, who may be a cripple, but he has the potential to unlock all of the greater mysteries in A Song of Ice and Fire. Then you have Arya, who's becoming a deadly ninja warrior, all while having the shit beaten out of her while she's temporarily blind. And then there's Sansa. So you have all these other crazy important storylines going on, and then you have Sansa, who's mainly just political intrigue. She's constantly playing the Game of Thrones. But then getting back to these leaks here, we have one of the biggest plot lines next season for Sansa, which was doing what's right for House Stark. Now remember, she has that quarrel with Arya about her writing that letter under Cersei's discretion, saying, "Robb, come bend the knee to Joffrey, please." But for the most part, Arya and Sansa's beef last season was nonsense, and we all find that out in the last episode that culminates in the death of Littlefinger. These two had been working together the entire time, so it looks like Arya's big point next season for Stark is going to be kill as many things as possible. Jon Snow is going to be as great a leader as possible. Bran is going to be creepy, but also enlighten as many people as you can before you ultimately die, because without the Night King, there's really no existence for you. So that leaves Sansa. What's her major plot line going to be next season, if not being more political intrigue? That's the one thing she's good at. I don't know if they're going to shoehorn in a plot between Tyrion and Sansa to sort of rid the realm of a union between Jon and Daenerys, but I do think that she's going to have some sort of beef with Jon when he first arrives with Daenerys, because remember, when he last left, she explained to him that she doesn't think this is a good idea because the last Targaryen who summoned a Stark down south killed their grandfather and their uncle. So the fact that this leak claims that Sansa screams with Jon and says, "How could you?" and it's only a matter of time before Daenerys does the same to them. Well, of course, because like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, anyone who is not in Daenerys' inner circle does not really trust her. All they know is what they hear about Targaryens and what they hear about the Field of Fire 2.0. They don't really know who she is as a person. But the leak closes out by saying Tyrion and Sansa end up meeting in the crypts at the end of the episode. It's not known what is said during the meeting, but it's clear that they both agree that Jon and Dany cannot be allowed to continue their romance. Just then, the camera pans out, and we see Jon and Daenerys exchanging vows inside the Godswood with a snowy backdrop of weirwood trees and dragons. Now, my voice just went up 10 decibels there, because that is where this leak falls off into tinfoil. Now, there's no way that Jon and Daenerys are going to get married on the first episode. I don't even know if there's a chance that they're going to get married. For one, who knows if they're going to survive until the end, but the fact that they did just consummate on the boat and they're clearly in love with each other, I do hope we get some sort of union between the two of them. I just don't think it's going to be in the first episode. But a snowy backdrop of weirwood trees and dragons does sound quite magical, I will say. Now, I did say that this leak could likely be horseshit, but when you look at the bigger picture, continuing with the storylines that each of those characters left off, mainly Tyrion and Sansa, they are set to have several conversations with Jon and Daenerys next season. I do think that the person who will have the biggest issue with Daenerys coming into Winterfell is going to be Sansa Stark. Sansa is the Lady of Winterfell, so if anyone who is in a position to object to Daenerys staying there with Jon Snow, even though she's their greatest ally, Sansa's gonna be that person. Jon mentioned to everyone last season that men, women, children, old and young alike are all gonna need to pick up a sword and learn how to fight. Sansa's one of the only people who has screen time on the show, woman or female, it doesn't matter. She's not picked up a sword at all. So the fact that she is sort of relying on others to keep her safe makes me think that she may die in trying to save other people. And then just sort of relating back to what I was saying earlier about Daenerys, I do think that she has the potential to become the Mad Queen. The main reason being is because that's what Dan and Dave has been leading up to this entire series. Now, they've been subtly hinting at it, but remember back in Game of Thrones Season 6, when Daenerys first arrives back from Vaz Dothrak, and she comes back to Meereen being attacked by the slavers because of a deal that Tyrion had set up. Now, when Tyrion asks her what she's going to do, she says, "I'm going to basically slaughter all of these motherfuckers. I'm going to show them what fire and blood is and what House Targaryen is famous for. She does just that. Then Game of Thrones season 7, she does the same thing to House Tarly. Even though she asked for Jon Snow's advice on what she should do, she still goes out and wreaks fire and blood. Now everyone's like, oh, you wouldn't have a problem with that if it was no, yes the fuck I would. I have a problem with it with any character, male or female, if we spent this much time with them and then they act outside of their rationale. Anyone who does that, I'm going to call them out on it. And this is what Daenerys is doing in these moments when she kills Randall and Dickon. She lets the fire and blood side get a hold of her. Now, Jon Snow, this same episode, starts to deter Daenerys from that path of fire, blood, and destruction. He shows her that there's another fight, a greater one that means so much more than all of these petty squabbles between the 7 kingdoms. She still chooses to go and act in fire and blood. Then finally, once she sees it first on for herself, the Night King and what he's capable of, and then she ultimately loses a dragon, well, her new fight becomes the Night King. But if you remember, in Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 7, she still has a bit of that fire and blood twinkle in her eye when she tells Cersei that as long as they're up north fighting the Night King, that Cersei will remain safe. So that leads us to believe that as soon as the fight between the Long Nights is over and the Night King is finally taken care of, Daenerys is going to go back to fire and blood. This is where Jon Snow steps in, or comes in rather. Joke there, sex. But seriously though, I think in all actuality, Dan and Dave have been leading up to a fire blood ending with Daenerys unless Jon Snow can somehow stop it. Now what I want y'all to do is debate with me down below how you think I'm wrong about Daenerys or how you think I interpreted her wrong. And also, do you see a plot between Tyrion and Sansa to end the relationship of ice and fire between Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen? Let me know down below. Alright, with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this video, make sure you're subscribed, and then make sure you have your notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. Also, super special shout out to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. Super welcome to Julie, and a super special thank you to Mario, Terry, and Jimmy, as they are the executive producers of this video. Super special shout out to every single person watching this video right now. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunts, Defender of the Long Night Reviews. Guess I'll do another after the credits Easter egg. Hey, go follow me on Instagram. I post nudes daily.